Morning students, let us see about cognitive radio unit 5 advanced topics in cognitive radio. Here overview of security issues in cognitive radio, acquisition based spectrum markets in cognitive radio networks, public safety and cognitive radio for Internet of Things. Cognitive Radio Network Security Introduction. CR is a revolutionary technology to alleviate the spectrum shortage problem and brings improvements in the efficiency of spectrum utilization. Successful deployment of CR networks and the realization of benefits depends on the placement of essential security mechanism. The emergence of the opportunistic spectrum sharing, that is OSS, paradigm and cognitive radio technology raises new security implications. Taxonomy of security threats. So the beginning of that CR network security threats, it is divided into two, that is spectrum access related security threats, here radio software security threats. The spectrum access related security threats in two ways. Threats to incumbent coexistence mechanism, here threats to self coexistence mechanism. Here the spectral honeypots. Sensory manipulation means there is a primary user emulation, geospatial manipulation, transmission false spectrum sensing information, abstract synchronization of QPAs. Here then for the threats of self coexistence mechanism, there is a transmission false spurious intercell, then exploit abstract intercell spectrum sharing process. Then we have the radio spectrum security threats to the software download process, injection of false forget policies, injection of false forget SW updates, injection of malicious software, then software IP theft, software tempering, then unauthorized policy changes, tempering the CR changes. Example, system strategy reasoner or policy reasoner. Then overview of security threats to incumbent coexistence. Spectrum sharing or coexistence is an important attribute to CR networks. CR networks support two types of coexistence, that is incumbent coexistence, that is coexistence between primary and secondary networks. Then self coexistence, that is coexistence between secondary networks. CR needs a spectrum sensing to identify follow spectrum bands, that is white spaces. Secondary users are permitted to operate in licensed bands only on a non-interference basis to the incumbent user. Secondary user that detect the presence of incumbent signal immediately switch to another band. Then overview of security threats to incumbent coexistence. On the other hand, if the security user detect the presence of a secondary user, it invoke a self-coexistence mechanism to share spectrum resources. There are two types of security threats to incumbent coexistence, that is primary user emulation attack. First one is a huge secondary user attempt to gain priority over other secondary users by transmitting signals that emulate the characteristics of the incumbent signals. Due to the programmability of CR, it is possible to modify the radio software of a CR to change its emission characteristics so that they resemble those of incumbent transmitter. Then BiSANet failures in DSS may be caused by either malfunctioning sensing nodes, launching spectrum sensing data falsifications, that is SSDF attacks. The incorrect spectrum sensing data are reported to the fusion center, which affects the accuracy of the sensing decision. The goal of DSSS is to make an accurate sensing decision after carrying out data fusion of local sensing results in the presence of failures. Investigation of DSS BiSANet failures involve not only the study of data fusion technique but also interplay between the data fusion technique and the spectrum sensing techniques. Then the self-coexistence mechanism of CR networks are defined to part of the network or air interspace. Here we focus on self-coexistence mechanism of IEEE 802.22. IEEE 802.22 is the first standard for wireless access network based on CR technology. It specifies the air interface for a wireless regional area network that uses follow segments of the UHF or VHF TV bands between 54 and 862 MHz. It is possible for a number of 802.22 cells to have a overlapping coverage areas. Here we see that is ODSC protocol. Here if on exclusive sharing is not feasible, then 802.22 VRN need to acquire spectrum resources through exclusive spectrum sharing via the on-demand spectrum contention. ODSC protocol. ODSC process enable a cell to acquire better or more channels to support the quality of service of the admitted workloads. Base station collect neighboring cells spectrum utilization information by receiving inter-cell control messages. The control messages called inter-cell beacon are used by BS to exchange spectrum utilization information. Inter-cell beacon are vulnerable to unauthorized modification as they are not protected by the 802.22 security sublayer. Thank you, students.